Hi there. I have not made a video in a very, very long time. Probably like 7 months now. But I decided to start being a more active YouTuber again. I guess I'm feeling inspired. And I figured a good place to start was probably talking about how the delivery went. And that was kind of a mixed bag. Labor started the day the baby was due, November 9th. And they were sort of like these, slow, spaced out contractions, and that lasted for, 4 days. And then, serious labor set in, and I told my husband, he needed to not go to work that day, and we'll just start considering this his time off, because I knew it wasn't, at least I didn't feel like it was going to be too much longer. I thought we'd probably be delivering the baby in the next 24 to 48 hours. So it was, hard labor for that whole day, and I was just sort of laboring around the house while he was packing stuff and getting stuff ready, because we live outside a major city, and we were doing a home birth, but our home was too far away from an emergency room in the event that something went, catastrophically wrong. So I was going to be having the baby at my friend's house, because she lives, right across the street from an emergency room, so really couldn't have been, a more ideal location. So we're getting all packed up, I'm having contractions, I'm exhausted, because I have not been sleeping well at all through these, 4 days of prodromal labor. It's really painful. It's the worst period you've ever had, just relentless, keeps going. But it's not really like labor yet, because it's going to get worse. So here we are, they're more significant contractions, and they're maybe 9-10 minutes apart, and they're pretty painful. So he's buzzing around the house, we're getting things ready to go, we head over there, and we have my older kid with us, who is so sick. It was just terrible timing. He had, a horrible respiratory infection thing going on. So he's with us. So we didn't have quite as much support as would have been nice, built around the experience, but, it was alright. It was me and my husband, and a little bit of help here and there, but we were pretty okay. But anyway, so it's both of us. We're at the house where we're going to have this baby. My older kid is with us, and my midwife is checking in periodically, coming to see how much I'm dilated and whatnot. And it's slow going, it's 3 centimeters dilated. And so I know I'm going to be there, for at least overnight. And that's okay. The first night was relaxed. Well, was relaxing as such a thing can be. I'm excited. I'm thinking, this baby's going to be coming soon. I did not sleep at all. I mean, I tried to, but I didn't really sleep that much. I spent most of my labor in the bathtub, the same place I am right now. So, yeah, I was kind of napping on and off in the bathtub, because it made it slightly less agonizing to be in the tub. So yeah, that night comes, and it's the next morning, and they kind of feel like they're I mean, it's always going, right? But they're irregular, and some of them are stronger than others. So just waiting for them to become more regular and become more strong, and there's just a lot of that, honestly, for the next 3 days. Basically, as my body was trying to squeeze the baby down, the baby was trying to push himself back up, and was fighting and was resisting, and I'm sure if I would have maybe kept at it for longer, I would have had a natural delivery. But after 7 days, I was just exhausted, and I was like, fuck it, I give up, cut this baby out of me. And it had been a beautiful time at my friend's, again, as beautiful as it can be, with another sick kid running around, who for a while, and again, we were lucky because the emergency room was right across the street, but he was feeling so not good that for a while I was at the house laboring by myself while my husband was across the street having our older kid looked at. So, I mean, in some ways it was beautiful, in some ways it was a complete clusterfuck. But for as far as the environment goes, it was just gorgeous. I mean, my friend's house was just like a retreat. It was beautiful, and she was so thoughtful and lovely, and she, stocked the refrigerator with soups and salads, or rather, sandwiches and salads, just, easy stuff to just shove into your face that was healthy and nutritious and good for your body, and that was just so sweet, and it just felt, so sacred and beautiful to be in that space while I was in labor. But as much as I wanted to have this glorious water birth and lay this newborn baby triumphantly across my chest. That is just not what happened. Instead, what happened was that my midwife put together the surgical team that dreams are made of to slice the baby out of me. But, you know, despite her best efforts and despite her cherry-pecking the staff, obviously she can't protect me from all the cishet assholes in the world. So that was, you know, the really shitty part of things. This is my second C-section. Just not good at... I can grow them, the squirting them out part that apparently I struggle with. But with my first kid, his umbilical cord had ended up getting, like, pinched, so that's why they had to go in and take him out. But, what was I gonna say? Fuck. Oh, okay. So yeah, with my first C-section, dude, I was in the hospital for, like, a week. 5 days. And even when I went home, I was still, like, achy and not feeling very good, right? My hospital experience with this second C-section was so horrible that I left, like, the night after I had the baby, like, against the advice of the staff there. And I probably shouldn't have, because I was in I mean, literally all I did was lay in bed and cry, like, the night I got home, because you're all stapled up, you're in agony. I was in so much pain that I could barely tolerate existing, let alone relax enough to fall asleep. But anyway, how we got to that point. So, you know, it's the third morning? Yes. It's the third day, second morning, because we showed up that day, in the day. So, like, we showed up in the day the first time that we were there, you know, the first day that we were there, maybe, like, in the early evening. Spent the night, then there was another whole day. Spent the night again, and then the next day, and keep in mind there had been 3 days of labor, 3 or 4, leading up to that. So, it had been a pretty exhausting process, so it's the second morning, but the third day. There was a lot of blabbering. But anyway, that we were there, and I tell my husband to call the midwife and say that I'm done trying. And I just want to go and just have a C-section now. I was exhausted, and I knew that as soon as that baby was born, you know, it wasn't like, I remembered having my last baby. I know it's not like I'm going to get to sleep a whole lot after that. I didn't sleep for like 3 days after my first kid was born. A newborn baby is so tiny and fragile. They're like fucking choking to death on their phlegm. They like need you. They really need you. So I'm thinking, I haven't slept for 7 days. I'm in agony. My husband hasn't slept in like probably 4 or 5 days at this point. We're going to need energy for after this baby is born. And also, like, I had this anxiety about the scar on my uterus from before. I'm thinking, like, this is, like, 7 days that it's been straining and working. And, you know, while that doesn't guarantee that something could go wrong, like, all of those things are extra stressors. All of those things are extra concerns. So between my exhaustion and my husband's exhaustion and the awareness of the workload that awaited me upon the delivery of this baby, I just felt like it was in everyone's best interest to just expedite things. So I tell the midwife this, and you know, she's really supportive and awesome. I mean, she reassures me, you know, about my decision, which is wonderful, because when you decide to do something like that, at least for me, I was combating, like, this sense of failure, too, because part of you wants to just be, like, endlessly stoic, whether that's, like, practical or healthy or, like, good for you or not. So she's really nice about that, and she puts together a team, this awesome surgeon and a really great anesthetist, and they're going to meet us at the hospital. And literally we just walked right in and got swooped right up by this team, and I was in a waiting room right away. And then I dealt with my first bitch of the evening, my first problem person, or the afternoon or whatever. So this chick, you know, I obviously have talked about how I am raising my newborn child gender neutral so that they can articulate for themselves how they identify, and when they decide for themselves how they want to be identified, then, you know, we'll respect that, and that will be what it is. But until then, nobody knows, and nobody gets to make that decision for them. So they're asking what the gender of my unborn child is, and I'm like, you know, saying gender neutral pronouns, and like this one lady's like, I won't do that. She's like, I don't care. I'm sorry. I will not do that. And I was pretty much like, get the fuck out of the room then. Like, I'm not gonna put up with that. So she was excused. And then you know, they're just getting my information and getting my vitals, and it was fairly okay from that point on until they, you know, as they were taking out the baby. That wasn't bad. The team that did that was great and fantastic. She was really the only awful one, but it was still super, super jarring to like have that be my first initial experience, and it was a foreshadowing of what was to come. But at least the surgeon was great, the anesthetist was great, which is nice, right? Because you really want to be able to trust and feel comfortable with the people who are cutting you open. And that was a really beautiful experience. With my first child, like, I was just sort of behind the curtain, you know, I heard him when he cried, but I didn't actually get to, like, see him or anything until the nurse or whatever brought him around for me to hold him. But with this baby, there was a camera, which was really cleverly situated, so like you can't see that you're open. It doesn't look like they're open to you. You can just sort of see into this little hole that they've made. I don't know what witchcraft they used to create that illusion, but it was not disturbing footage to see. So I was able to like look over when they were lifting the baby out, and so I was actually able to see their little face and eyes and their little mouth open as they cried for the first time, and it was just, I don't know, it was so beautiful. Of course, I was sobbing. It was the most beautiful thing ever. When you hear your children make their first sounds in the world, I don't think there's really anything that's more incredible than that. So that was beautiful, and that was holy and gorgeous and lovely, and me and my husband had a beautiful moment, you know, just sort of being close to each other whilst I was strapped to the table, cuddling this new baby together, and that was great. And then they took me back, you know, as they were stapling me. Obviously, they stapled you back together first. Well, they were really fast at it, though. I mean, they bang, 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 had me back together again. This really was, like, the dream team. Like, my first C-section wasn't terrible by any means, but, I mean, this team made them look like a bunch of amateurs, for sure. Just in terms of how fast they were, how quick they were. You know, everything about it was just better. My anesthetist was, like, a genius. You know, I'd be like, I feel nauseous, or I don't feel good at this, and she's over there, like, messing with her little knobs and stuff. And I felt pretty good, you know, compared to the first one. I feel like this was definitely an experience to be grateful for, you know, as far as C-sections go. So then I'm, like, trying to hold anyway, because my body was still mostly paralyzed from my upper spine down, so I could only kind of use my arms. And I was, like, holding the baby close to me, and they wanted to stuff their face right away, so we'd brought donor milk with us, because I've had sort of a top surgery. Kind of a top surgery, kind of not. I'll make a video about that sometime here in the near future. Anyway, I wasn't expecting to be able to breastfeed, and even if I could, you know, I wasn't really, like, feeling it all that much. So and I don't really believe in formula either. No poo-poo on anyone who uses it. Obviously, it's not the worst stuff in the world. It grows beautiful, healthy babies, but in my opinion, if you can feed your child chest milk, you should. And I've been very lucky. You know, my child's 7 months old now, and I lactated very little. More on that later. But I haven't had to feed them any formula at all. I've been so lucky by the outpouring of support from the community. I've got like over 3,000 ounces right now that I'm sitting on as and that's typically what we have in stock. You know, as we're feeding them, more people are giving it to us, and we're so blessed. We really, really are, because it's competitive as fuck to try and get donor milk. Anyway. So we have some of that on hand, and, like, we're feeding the little baby right away, and it's great, and it's wonderful. And then there's the next day. I had a pretty good nurse the first night, Anastasia. Of course they were great, because Mary picked them, my midwife. But the next day I was not so lucky. The next day it was just the regular trash that the hospital had. This bitch. Okay, so I'm sitting in the fucking hospital, in the hospital bed, in a fucking hospital nightgown, fucking catheter hanging out of me, fucking collecting my piss in it, IV sticking out of my arm, cradling my newborn baby in my arms, and this bitch says to me, "Where's the mom?" And I'm like, my husband is away right now, and he'll be back shortly. And she's taken aback by that, and she says, "But where's the mom?" I was like, this basic bitch. It's like, this is my baby, as in, it came out of my body. And at that point, I'm pretty sure she probably shit a frisbee into her pants. That's what her face, you know, emoted to me anyways. She didn't say another word. She came over and took my blood in the, like, most uncomfortable, wretched way she possibly could. I honestly should have just thrown her ass out of the room. But at this point, I haven't slept in 7 days, and I've just had a surgery, and I've spent all night in agony, which was stressful as fuck, because my baby kept choking on their phlegm, which is very normal for babies, especially babies that are born via C-section, because I guess it just doesn't, like, squeeze the goop out of their throat like a vaginal birth does. And I can barely move, right, because I've just been fucking sliced open. So I'm, like, trying, I can't even move myself out of the bed. So just like a fucking panic attack for me all night, worrying desperately about this tiny little newborn baby that keeps needing gunk sucked out of its mouth and throat, and that I am too physically weak to be able to, like, get up and get to. So, I mean, that, obviously, you know, I didn't sleep at all. And it was fine, and the baby was fine, but, it, you know, it would have been nice to have had more support from the nursing staff, but it just wasn't there, so whatever. And, you know, that's not even what I'm bitching about in this video. It was stressful, though. It was a stressful component. But that's part of why, you know, I was more tolerant of some of the more abusive behavior that I received the day that I left, because I was just so exhausted and so, like, beaten down from the effort of this process of bringing this child into the world that I just didn't even really have a whole lot left to, like, advocate for myself, right? So thank God for Mary. Thank God for my midwife, or it would have been even worse. So that day, I'm like, after that experience, I'm like, I'm fucking leaving this hospital today. This is exhausting. I cannot deal with this. And then, you know, other people were awful too, even though they were trying to be nice. Like, everyone had to tell me about every trans person they'd ever known and how they're super cool to trans people and I love trans people. It's like, this is just as othering right now as if you were, you know, being discriminatory or unkind to me. If you could just treat me like another human being, that would be fantastic. But of course, nobody could do that. That was way, way too difficult for them. I just knew this fascinating curiosity, and everybody had to make sure that I was aware of what a fascinating or, you know, repugnant curiosity, whichever it may be. And it was just fucking draining and exhausting, and I didn't feel safe. So Mary pulled some strings and pushed for us to be able to leave. And I left without taking any pain medicine with me, you know, barely 24 hours after I had had this surgery. So, you know, I mean, it was kind of dumb at the same time, because I needed the help. I needed the support. I could barely move and walk at home, and I was in pain. But at the same time, you know, I wasn't going to deal with never feeling comfortable the whole time I was, because they check on you constantly, right? It's constantly somebody in there with you. And if they're a fucking dingus who's either making you feel like you're a disgusting person or making you feel like you're some zoo curiosity because they have to tell you about their trans cousin or whatever, and how everyone in their family is so mean to their trans cousin, but not them, because they are the greatest and they are a hero to the trans folk, and aren't you so lucky that they're your nurse? It's all just different kinds of exhausting. So I decided that I was going to leave that night, and we did, and we came home. And then, you know, it had its pros and cons. The baby is gorgeous, beautiful, healthy, wonderful, and we were loving that and enjoying that, but it was also a really, really rough recovery. And again, I'm just so grateful that I had my midwife, because she was just coming to the house and checking on us, and I didn't have to go to a fucking hospital or a clinic and deal with any stupid fucking people. And, like, honestly, that birthing experience is exactly why I had a midwife in the first place. I did not want to have to deal with the clinic any more than I was absolutely gonna have to. You know, obviously, ultrasounds, genetic testing, things like that. Smaller practices don't have the resources to be able to have that kind of equipment, so you have to go into the city and deal with the ignorance that abounds. But yeah, that was the birthing experience. It was not exactly what I had hoped that it would be, but And there were beautiful parts in it. There really were, and there were so many beautiful moments, but it was also, like, really kind of traumatizing in some ways. And it's just... I don't understand why the medical field is so inexcusably slow, at least in the States, on catching up with even just, like, basic courtesy, basic respect for trans people. Like, I know that trans men having babies is not an anomaly. I mean, the news likes to make it seem like it's some super rare thing, but it's not. I mean, it probably happens, you know, thousands of times every year in the States alone. There's just no excuse for it. There's just no excuse for it. There needs to be more education. There needs to be more awareness. There needs to be more sensitivity training. Like, so many medical professionals, if they're lucky, they maybe got, like, a 1-hour lecture once on, like, transgender folks, you know, genderqueer folks. Not even enough. And that's really scary when they're guiding you through some really significant things. Like, I have had a lot of doctors, a lot of different primary care providers. I've seen specialists, you know, I've gone to urgent care doctors, emergency room doctors, and, you know, I'm going to guess that I've probably seen 30-plus providers of one type or another since I've transitioned, and never once have I not had to educate my provider on how to, if not how to even treat me with respect, at the very least, I've had to educate them some about myself and my body and my care and what it requires, because you just don't ever get the luxury of walking into a situation where your doctor just, like, knows what they're doing right off the bat. And that's just, it's abhorrent. It's completely abhorrent. But that's, you know, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is, and it's got to change. And obviously that's a reflection of erasure of trans people and trans lives and our culture, and it's also a result of hatred and intolerance and people deciding who matters and who's valid and who's not. But, you know, in the end, like, who really loses in that situation? All of us. Everybody. Babies. It's fucked, and we really should be doing better. But that's my long, rambling video about my pregnancy experience. I'm feeling chatty, so maybe I'll make another video now in the tub about my sort of chest top surgery. Well, that was obviously a surgery, but it wasn't really a top surgery per se, so much as it was, like, a super reduction. It's an interesting story. And it centers around human kindness in the medical field. Yeah, that guy was pretty cool. Alright, more on him later. Have a nice rest of your night.